how she felt about the movie version, she was quite aware that there were going to be two distinct versions, and she was quite pleased with that. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is J.K. Noble if you're new and you're listening to the Pen Sorcery. I hope you're having an amazing day so far, and if not, let's try to turn that around and let's talk about something really fun and inspiring. Now I want to talk about this story that has swept the world by storm, and it actually has a movie adaptation as well. The movie is actually, I think, more famous than the book. I feel that neither one is actually better than the other, but they're just two complete separate versions, as they say. Books are always better than the movies. I wouldn't say so in this case because both were works of art and very distinct from one another. And you're gonna know what I'm talking about when I reveal the title. It's Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Of course you know this story. Of course you do. And I'm seeing it on social media all over. Everyone's rewatching the movie, as they should. It is a classic. It is so beautiful and vibrant and romantic, and very different from the book. In the book, I would say the movie is way more romantic than the book, and the book is more, it has a big sense of humor. And I love the way that Diana expresses her sense of humor through her writing. So she actually died recently, and I just want to say, may you rest in peace, Diana Wynne Jones, and thank you for your amazing contribution to the literary world. Everyone across the world knows your story and loves your story. You know, it's so important that authors get to experience the love that they have for their characters in other people. And I'm happy that she did get to experience that when she saw the Ghibli studio version of her story, because then the world got to love and celebrate her characters. I actually have two of her other books right there. And I'm in the middle of the second one in the Howl series, and it's called The Castle of Many Ways. And it's really fun and really nice, and I recommend to fantasy lovers. She's a very whimsical writer. Everything is light and airy and childish, very much like C.S. Lewis. The first book in the Chronicles of Narnia was very much childish and playful and inspiring at the same time, and that's what Diana has here. Except C.S. Lewis doesn't have as much of humor as she does. When Diana was asked how she felt about the movie version, she was quite aware that there were going to be two distinct versions, and she was quite pleased with that. And it's so amazing how she was from the UK, and way across the world, like in Japan, they wanted to make a film adaptation for her book. So what does that tell you as writers? To me, that means that anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible. And if you think no one cares about your story now, you don't know what people feel across the globe. It could be beloved by someone that you haven't ever met. It could be beloved by someone way off in the future after its publication. It could be beloved hundreds of years later. It doesn't matter. It will find someone that needed it when the timing is right for them to know it, to find it and discover it. That's what I find so beautiful about stories. We find stories that we need at the right time. I often find these stories that were written hundreds of years ago. I'm exaggerating, far before my time, and I realized that those were the stories that I needed to hear in this lifetime. And isn't it so interesting how it doesn't matter what time period that story was written, because stories could last forever, because even with the difference in technology and the different ways of culture and how society has changed from the past to the present, we can still find ourselves in characters from the past. We can still find ourselves in characters from fictional universes. We could find ourselves in absolutely anything, and it is so important that we recognize that there is life in all forms. Am I explaining that correctly? There is In all the boundless forms of life, we can find ourselves in those things. It doesn't have to be human. It could be alien. It could be a bug. It could be an animal. We could relate to anything. And if we could relate to anything, then we recognize that all life is precious and all life is deserving and all things are conscious, and it will unite us and bring us together and take this world to new heights. And I've babbled a lot and I haven't even got to the book yet. So let's start talking about Howl's Moving Castle. What I enjoyed so much about this was Sophie's journey. Now, Sophie had a hard life and she had lost her mother, then her father. She was stuck with her stepmother, her sister, and her half-sister. Well, in this world, everyone who is of age goes to learn at an apprenticeship. Sophie was stuck in her father's old hat making shop because she was very, very talented. But Sophie had a lot of limiting beliefs. So while both her sisters had moved on to what they wanted to learn in life, Sophie was stuck, and her limiting beliefs had continued to make her stuck. So she always believed because she was the eldest, she was not going to be successful. She was not going to get married. She identified with this limiting belief. And she, even though it made her depressed and made her a hermit and afraid of life and the outside world, she stuck with it because this was her belief. If you're the oldest, you are unlucky and you will not get anything in life. And that is how she lived her life. She basically closed herself off, when in actuality, she is not so much of a hermit as she'd like to believe. She is a very tough cookie. And the fact that the Witch of the Waste performs this curse upon her to make her limiting belief her actual reality, she was transformed. If you don't know, she transforms into an old lady. But the fact that she transforms into an old lady suddenly awakens her true character, which I find that to be so important. So we talked about previously in our previous episode of the Pen Sorcery how pain plays a big impact on how the character shines. How because the character experiences pain, they are able to use their free choice and react to the pain how they see fit. Without pain, you do not truly see the character for who they are, and because of the pain and their struggles, you get to see their actions, you get to see who they truly are. And that's exactly what happened with Sophie. So Sophie, becoming this old woman that she always thought she already was, realizes that as an old woman, she has nothing to lose. She's not bound by society's rules anymore. So this is her opportunity to break free. She's no longer the needed at the hat shop, she believes. And she's on her way to discover her journey. And she's a very silly character who sort of accepts being an old lady, half-heartedly searching for reversing the curse. She does search for the end of the curse, but does she really want it? I don't believe she does. The Ghibli studio version of the story, in the film, Sophie, when she feels young again because of Howl, or when she experiences simple pleasures, she reverts back to her younger self. That is not something that happens in the book that I thought would, and I really appreciated that theme in the movie. I did see the film first, and yeah, I was shocked to find that that did not happen in the book, and I thought it was really, really impactful and important that she allows herself to feel young at certain points, and that she gets to age down and experience what it's like to be young. I thought that was important, and I wish they had that in the book, but that is okay. That was not Diana Wynne Jones's vision for the novel, and she added a lot of other interesting and fun things that we want to talk about as well. So, for those of you who don't know, in the book, the castle, the very famous castle, is a hovercraft and not this sort of contraption, steampunk contraption that we see in the movie that walks across the lands. And both are really cool, and those are just some differences that we get to see. Also, Howl's hair does change, but not just on like not randomly. He's a man who quite enjoys his appearances, so in the book he does change his hair according to how he feels that day. He's the type of person to spend hours in the bathroom. He's a mess. And his introduction into the story is what sparks Sophie's true personality, because everything that she hates, Howl embodies. And that is why there is such an impactful pair, because he's a mess and she's a neat freak, for example. And he's a very young and youthful sort of guy, and she's a very, stick in the mud, wants to stick to her rules, and she's, old soul. He likes everything new. She likes to mend things. Um he likes to go out and buy food, for example, and she would sit at home and cook. He has a big facade. His limiting belief is that he believes he is a coward, when in actuality, he is very brave and a very good person at that. The whole book, Sophie doubts that Howl is a good man, and she secretly hates him, and she wants to find the cure for her curse through Calcifer. So Calcifer and her make a bargain that if she was to free him, he would thus break her curse. And thus she began working in the castle as more of a self-hired maid, befriending Michael and Calcifer. And the Witch of the Waste does not become a friend of theirs, like how you see in the movie. There's a totally different ending. There is no war that we see in the movie as well. Howl is not off fighting war. He is busy being a wizard in this land of Ingary. He's busy helping people's problems. And he makes a profit off of it, and that's how he makes his living. So you see, it's very, very different. He does make a big enemy with the Witch of the Waste, so they do have a common enemy, him and Sophie, but most of the time, him and Sophie are constantly butting heads, and that is something we do not see in the film, because in the film, they are a much more kind and soft version of themselves. They are like the most beautiful versions of themselves, and in the book, they're like this this cranky old lady and this, young man that seems foolish, but he's actually very, very wise. And she seems very, very wise, but she's actually very immature. They're the perfect contrast. And that is why I fell in love with this book in ways that I did not fall in love with the movie. And there are reasons that I love the movie so much that are excluded from the book entirely. Of course, Calcifer's snarky personality is the same, I believe, and Michael is as cute as ever, but he's older in the book, actually, than in the movie. He's about 15 years old in the book. And everything just sort of ties together between Sophie's family ties that are not tied together in the movie. So in the movie, for those who know that they become their own family between the old lady Witch of the Waste, Sophie, Michael, Calcifer, Howl, and the Scarecrow. But it's entirely different. The plot is entirely different. The characters are similar, but overall it's so good. Prepare to laugh, guys, because what I mentioned before is that because of their clashing personalities, and they're basically discovering each other through this large span of time of them being together, but making it to each other as if they're out of one another's business. It offers such a funny and humorous experience that I would just, burst out laughing while I was reading it. It was so enjoyable and so light and fun. To me, when I am writing romance, that is how I want to write romance. I don't want both the characters to be like the softest versions of themselves, because that is just not reality. Everyone has faults, and I truly believe in faults making a solid character. You have to include faults into your story to create that solid character that you love. We love Howl, even though he's a mess and he has this limiting belief of being a coward and all of his problems, that he seems often rude, but he really isn't, and all of these things. And likewise with Sophie and all of her quirks and her habits and her faults. We love her for that. And the two of them combined, they're the perfect pair because they contrast each other on every single point. And how is it possible that in this contrast that they found love for each other? So in the movie, they admired each other. And in the book, they detested each other yet found love. They found the admirable qualities later after they made their discoveries. As soon as Sophie learned the truth about Howl and realized that he is a good man and all the amazing things that he was doing that were that she had misperceived, then the true perception of who he is reawakened, and she was able to experience him for who he really was, even with his faults included. The faults do not change. But that is why their contrast was so important, and their dialogue. They both have a very specific way of speaking that I wish that all authors would incorporate. So the fact that Diana Wynne Jones was able to create this friendly banter between the two of them was so impactful to me, because we as readers see that Hal sees right through Sophie. He sees right through her. She's not an old lady. We know this. She just doesn't know it, and that's what makes it so humorous. She thinks that she gets away with everything. She thinks she's this sneaky, sly spy. And she gets found out each and every time. And it turns out Howl is always 10 steps ahead of her. And she has a lot of self-discoveries to make, that she is more powerful and more amazing than she believes herself to be. Their assistance in one another's life changed and helped each other grow, and this character development was beautifully written. That because of the addition of each other in one another's lives, the both of them experienced this major character development and became better people for it. When someone eggs you on to a point where you're just going nuts, you just want to get them out of your life, they're just annoying, and you're like, go away from me, you are a nuisance. That is them. That is them to each other, and yet in the end you realize that that person, you wouldn't be the same without them. You wouldn't be okay without them. You wouldn't be your true, authentic, best self without them. So you need that. You need that aggravation to get you to where you need to go. Changing yourself for the better is not always easy. And it takes that aggravating, annoying person to say, you're a little funny right here, for you to truly understand and see yourself in that light, and then move on and grow. So character development is not always easy breezy lemon squeezy, and that is what I enjoyed about her writing. That basically the two of them were perfectly created for one another and thrust together and challenge one another in ways that they both do not want to be challenged, because as we know, Sophie, being this stick in the mud, she is so stubborn. She will not change for anybody, and yet she makes those changes because of Howl. And likewise, Howl, he is also very stubborn, and he makes those changes because of her. There is this really funny, cute part at the end of the book where they both realize how much they mean to one another, and she questions how their relationship is going to be, because as we know, they're a fiery couple when together. I want to read that part to you because it was so cute. In the end of the book, when Hal sees Sophie's hair was red, he was like, wow, your hair is red, and she goes, it's natural. Because she values things being natural, and Hal really doesn't. And he says, I never seen why people put such value on things being natural, and this is a dude who colors his hair every single day. And in the end, he says, Hal said, I think we ought to live happily ever after. And she thought he meant it. Sophie knew that living happily ever after with Hal would be a great deal more eventful than any story made it sound. Though she was determined to try. It should be hair-raising, Howl said. And you'll exploit me, Sophie said. And then you'll cut up all my suits to teach me, said Howl. And that was it. So they recognize the fact that they're gonna, as they said, it will be hair-raising. They recognize that, and they take each other for all of that because they realize that they need one another. And it's so much more than need. It's that they have the desire to be with one another. Not that just that it benefits them because they become better people in one another's presence, but the fact that they enjoy, they're the type of people that enjoy the battle. There's so many different kinds of couples in the world that if you really sit down and observe them, you see they all have their own dynamic. And it's not always butterflies and, you know, chocolate covered strawberries, I don't know, walking in the park and holding hands. It a lot of the times it's, you know, it gets grimy and annoying and there's like a lot of anger and fighting. This is the couple that loves to bicker. And I love that. I love the fact that the author was very unique in her writing this romance. That it's not the, you know, fairy tale that we see in the film. Although we love fairy tales, we want things to be nice and easy and beautiful. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that as an author, as a consumer. All relationships are different, and this one was perfectly designed. And that's why I just love it so much. I just love it, love it, love it so much, and I will keep it and cherish it always. You might think that this relationship is unhealthy, but in actuality, it's very healthy because they're not abusing one another. They're really not. They're really actually two good people that just get on one another's nerves. I wish she continued on with this story so we could see how they are in life to come, maybe after they get married and so on. But I do believe that they're the type that now that they know one another, they're going to respect each other. And you do get to see that actually in the end, that they don't step on one another's toes so much. Because, for example, Howl loves his spiders in his room. He does not want his room to be cleaned because he loves those spiders. So when Sophie's siblings were in his room and they decided to clean his room because it was so filthy, she had put a stop to it because she knows Howl loves his spiders. She is a neat freak, guys. She's a neat freak. She doesn't like those spiders herself, but she put her needs aside for him. And we see that he does the same thing for her. So all those quirks that get on each other's nerves suddenly wash away once that love is brought into their life. This really inspires me as an author who I don't really generally like to write romance, but this kind of romance I would love to write any day of the week because it is so unique and this has more depth and more personality, more character, more drive, and more oomph. It's like the whole meal and not just dessert, if you get my drift. So anyways, I really truly recommend this book to all fantasy lovers. It's a very whimsical, beautiful fantasy. And younger kids could read this too. There's nothing bad in this book at all. I don't even think that they've kissed. It will definitely inspire your young one. I would say your tweens to search for maybe the right things in a relationship. The Ghibli studio did a wonderful job of Howl's Moving Castle and will forever be a staple in the anime movie business. And it was absolutely so beautiful. But this, it would be nothing without this. Now keep that in mind while you're writing. There might be a million different kinds of adaptations for your story in futures yet to come, but it would be nothing without your original. Thank you so much for listening to the Pen Sorcery, and I'm so happy to be sharing this with you, and I'll see you in our next episode. Bye!